The girl collapsed against the iron gate, rain hammering her shoulders hard enough to bruise, and pressed her forehead to the cold metal as lightning turned the world white. Her name was Luna Cartwright, and she had walked 11 miles that day with nothing in her stomach but rainwater and humiliation. Every inn between the highway and this mountain had turned her away. No coin, no bed. The last innkeeper had actually laughed, a sound that still rang in her ears louder than the thunder. She had seen the estate from the valley below, a sprawling fortress of dark stone that seemed to grow from the mountain itself, windows glowing amber against the storm. Local gossip in the last village had whispered the name with equal parts reverence and terror. The Vampire King's Hold. Warlord Xenophon, they called him. Ancient, powerful, unknowable. Luna did not care about any of that. She cared only that the estate was there, and that she might die of cold if she spent another hour in this storm. She rattled the gate, her voice cracking as she called out, "Please, anyone, I don't need a room, just somewhere dry, a stable. I'll sleep with the horses. I won't be any trouble." The wind ate her words. She sagged against the bars, exhausted past the point of dignity. Then, impossibly, the gate began to open. A figure emerged from the guardhouse, cloaked and hooded against the rain. Human, Luna thought, though she could not be certain. The figure approached without speaking, studying her through the downpour. "Please," Luna said again, "I can work. I'm good with animals. I just need to be out of the storm tonight. Your stables, that's all I'm asking for." The figure turned and walked back through the gate, vanishing into the darkness beyond. Luna's chest tightened. Of course. Even begging for a stable was too much to ask, but the gate remained open. She waited, shivering, unsure if this was permission or oversight. Then the figure returned, accompanied by another. This one was taller, dressed in formal attire that seemed absurdly pristine given the weather. When he spoke, his voice carried the precise diction of a career servant. "Miss," he said, inclining his head with a formality that made Luna want to weep. "Please come inside." She stumbled through the gate, barely able to believe it. "The stables," she managed. "I just need directions to the stables." The servant's expression did not change. "You will come with me." They led her not toward the outer buildings where she could hear horses moving in their stalls, but toward the main house itself. Luna's wet shoes slapped against cobblestones, then marble. Marble. She was leaving puddles on marble floors. "I think there's been a mistake," she said, her voice echoing in a vast entrance hall. "I only asked for the stables." "There has been no mistake," the servant replied. They climbed a staircase that belonged in a palace, not a mountain estate. Portraits lined the walls, faces pale and beautiful and cold. All of them had the same white hair, the same translucent skin. Vampires, everyone. Luna's heart hammered. She had heard the stories all her life. Vampires were real, though most humans pretended otherwise. They lived in their own society, separate and superior, bound by ancient laws that kept them from treating humans as cattle. Mostly. The servant stopped before a set of double doors carved with intricate patterns. He pushed them open, and Luna forgot how to breathe. The chamber beyond was impossibly large, impossibly beautiful. Gold leaf adorned every surface that was not already covered in silk or velvet. The bed alone could have housed a family of 6. A fireplace tall enough to stand in crackled with fresh flames, filling the room with warmth that made Luna's frozen fingers ache. "This cannot be for me," she whispered. "The master has offered you his hospitality," the servant said. "A bath has been drawn through that door. Clean clothing will be provided. Dinner will be brought to you within the hour." "But I asked for the stables." "The master does not house guests in stables." The servant bowed, actually bowed to her, and left before Luna could form another protest. She stood dripping on a rug worth more than everything she had ever owned combined, trying to understand what was happening. This had to be a trap. A test. Vampires did not give golden chambers to human beggars without wanting something in return. But the bath was real and steaming, and her body made the decision before her mind could catch up. She shed her soaked rags and sank into water so hot it felt like forgiveness. When she emerged, she found a simple dress laid out on the bed, far finer than anything she had worn before, but not ostentatious. Somebody had judged her size perfectly. There were shoes, too, soft leather that molded to her feet like they had been made for her. The food arrived as promised, Not scraps, not leftovers, but a feast. Roasted chicken, fresh bread, vegetables in butter, wine that tasted like summer. Luna ate until her stomach hurt, then sat in a chair by the fire and tried to make sense of her situation. She had begged to sleep in stables and been given a palace chamber. She had expected to be turned away and been welcomed instead. Nothing about this followed any logic she understood. When exhaustion finally dragged her toward the enormous bed, she caught sight of herself in a mirror. Clean, dry, warm, and utterly out of place. She looked like a child playing dress-up in her mother's clothes. Tomorrow, she promised herself. Tomorrow she would find whoever had made this decision and explain the mistake. She would insist on earning her keep, paying back the kindness somehow. She would not be a charity case. But tonight, she let herself sink into sheets softer than clouds and sleep without fear for the first time in months. She woke to pale sunlight filtering through heavy curtains and the disorienting realization that the previous night had not been a dream. The golden chamber still surrounded her, beautiful and bewildering. A knock at the door made her jump. The same servant from the night before entered, carrying a breakfast tray. "Good morning, miss," he said, setting the tray on a small table. "I trust you rested well." "I need to speak with whoever made the decision to put me here," Luna said, climbing out of bed. "There's been some kind of mistake. I only needed shelter for one night and nothing this grand." "There has been no mistake. The master was informed of your request and offered you a chamber befitting a guest of this house." "Then I need to thank him and explain that I can't accept this without working for it. I'm good with horses, I said that, or kitchens. I can work kitchens, anything." The servant's expression remained neutral. "The master does not require payment for hospitality." "Everyone requires payment for something," Luna said firmly. "Please, let me speak with him." A pause, barely perceptible. Then the servant nodded. "I will convey your request. In the meantime, please eat. The master dislikes waste." He left, and Luna attacked the breakfast with the same determined hunger she had shown at dinner. The eggs were perfect. The pastries melted on her tongue. She hated how easily she could grow accustomed to this. An hour later, the servant returned. "The master will see you in his study. Please follow me." Her heart raced as they descended through the estate, passing more portraits, more evidence of wealth beyond measure. Servants moved through the halls with quiet efficiency, all human as far as Luna could tell. None of them looked mistreated or afraid. The study was smaller than the bedchamber, but no less impressive, lined floor to ceiling with books that looked ancient and precious. Behind a massive desk sat the figure that could only be Warlord Xenophon himself. Luna had seen vampires before, from a distance, but never one like this. His hair was pure white, falling past his shoulders in a way that should have looked soft but instead seemed sharp, like each strand was made of silver wire. His skin was so pale it almost glowed in the lamplight, translucent enough to show the faint tracery of veins beneath. His features were angular and perfect, inhuman in their symmetry. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Dark, ancient, and focused on her with an intensity that made her feel simultaneously seen and dissected. "Miss Cartwright," he said, and his voice was like cold water, clear and shocking. "I understand you wish to speak with me." She had prepared a speech. It died in her throat. He waited, perfectly still, in a way no human could manage. No fidgeting, no breathing she could detect. Just patience carved from stone. "I wanted to thank you," Luna finally managed, "for last night, for the room and the food. But I can't accept charity. I need to work for it. Please, let me work for what you've given me." "You asked for stables," Warlord Xenophon said. "I provided better. That is not charity. That is choice." "It's too much. I'm nobody. I don't deserve a golden chamber." Something flickered in his expression, too quick to identify. Deserve is an interesting word. What makes one person deserving and another not? I haven't done anything to earn it. You arrived at my gate in a storm and asked for shelter with more humility than most nobles show in demanding my best rooms. That earned my attention. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You are uncomfortable with generosity. I'm uncomfortable with debt I can't repay." "There is no debt." "There's always debt," Luna insisted. "You don't give golden chambers to beggars without expecting something back. So tell me what you want, and I'll work until I've paid it." Warlord Xenophon was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, though no warmer. You may remain as my guest for as long as you require shelter. When you are ready to leave, you will leave. That is the extent of the arrangement. That's not an arrangement. That's a miracle, and those don't exist. Then consider it an anomaly. He turned his attention to a document on his desk, a clear dismissal. Edgar will show you the grounds. The stables are extensive if you wish to visit them. The library is open to all guests. Do as you please. Luna wanted to argue further, but the set of his shoulders told her the conversation was over. She left the study frustrated and more confused than ever. Edgar, the servant who had first brought her inside, gave her a tour that took the better part of the morning. The estate was enormous, built into the mountain itself, with underground halls that stretched far beyond what should have been architecturally possible. The human staff lived in comfortable quarters above ground. The vampire residents, fewer in number, kept to the lower levels. How many vampires live here? Luna asked as they walked through a garden that seemed to exist in defiance of the mountain climate. Currently? 14, including the master, though that number fluctuates. This is Lord Xenophon's primary residence, but he maintains several estates. And he's a king? By birth and deed both, one of the oldest of our kind, and certainly the most respected in this region. Edgar's tone carried genuine admiration. He has held these mountains for over 2,000 years. Luna tried to wrap her mind around that time span, and failed. What does a vampire king want with a mountain estate? Privacy, primarily. Lord Xenophon has never enjoyed the politics of vampire courts. He prefers solitude and scholarship. They reached the stables, and Luna felt her first genuine smile since arriving. The horses were magnificent, clearly well cared for. She moved among them naturally, checking hooves and teeth with practiced hands. You do know horses, Edgar observed. My father was a stable master before he died. I grew up around them. She stroked a gray mare's nose, feeling the animal calm under her touch. This is a beautiful operation. The master is particular about his animals. Does he ride them? Not during daylight hours, obviously. But yes, at night he rides often. Luna spent the rest of the afternoon in the stables, making herself useful despite the groom's protests that she was a guest and need not work. Working felt normal. Working felt like she was paying her way, even if Warlord Xenophon refused to acknowledge the debt. That evening, Edgar informed her that dinner would be served in the small dining room, and that the master would be joining her. Why? Luna asked, suddenly nervous. He often dines with guests, Edgar said, though something in his tone suggested this was not quite true. She dressed in another simple gown she found laid out in her chamber, this one a deep blue that made her dark hair look almost black. When she entered the dining room, Warlord Xenophon was already seated at the head of a table far too large for two people. Miss Cartwright, he said, rising slightly as she entered. Old world manners from an old world being. Luna, please. Miss Cartwright makes me sound like a governess. Luna, then. He gestured to the seat nearest him. I hope the day treated you well. I spent most of it in your stables. Your grooms are excellent, but you might consider adjusting the feed ratio for the chestnut stallion in the east stall. He's getting too much grain for his activity level. One pale eyebrow rose fractionally. You determined this in one afternoon? I know horses. Luna accepted the wine a servant poured, then immediately felt awkward. Are you eating? Or is this just for me? I will drink wine for the pleasure of it, though it provides no sustenance. My other needs are met privately. Right. Blood. Luna tried not to think about where he sourced it. You're wondering if I killed a feed, he said, reading her expression with unsettling accuracy. I'm trying not to be rude enough to ask. I have not killed a human for blood in over 1,000 years. There are arrangements, willing donors, compensated fairly. It is far more civilized than the alternative and less troublesome legally. Luna relaxed slightly. That's good. The not killing part, I mean. I find murder tedious. All that disposal, the politics, the inevitable revenge plots, much simpler to simply pay people. He sipped his wine, his dark eyes never leaving her face. You are different than I expected. What did you expect? More gratitude, more fear, possibly both. I am grateful, Luna said carefully. I just don't understand why you're doing this, and fear seems pointless. If you wanted to hurt me, you would have done it already." Logical, something that might have been approval, crossed his face. "You asked to work for your lodging. Edgar tells me you spent the afternoon doing exactly that. I needed to be useful." "Why?" The question caught her off guard. "Because I'm not a charity case. I can't just take and take without giving anything back. It's not right." Warlord Xenophon set down his wineglass with deliberate care. "There is no moral debt in accepting help when you need it. Maybe not for you, but I've spent the last 3 months taking scraps and handouts, and every single one came with a price, a grope, a proposition, a demand. I'm tired of being something people take from." Her voice was sharper than she intended. "So if you're keeping me in a golden chamber because you expect me to be grateful in some specific way, just say it now." The silence that followed was arctic. Then, slowly, Warlord Xenophon smiled. It was not a kind expression. "You think I am softening you for exploitation. I think I don't know what else this could be. It could be exactly what I said, hospitality, freely given, without condition. Nobody does that. I do." He stood abruptly, and Luna instinctively leaned back, but he simply moved to a cabinet on the far wall, retrieving a bottle of something amber and old. When he returned, he refilled both their glasses with it instead of wine. "You remind me of something I prefer not to think about." "What's that?" "Humility born of desperation." He drank deeply, and for the first time, Luna saw something other than cold perfection in his face, something that might have been pain. "I was not always a king, Luna Cartwright. I was not always a vampire. And there was a time, long ago, when I stood at a gate much like mine and begged for shelter I did not receive." Luna stared at him. "You were turned away." "I was human, young, and freezing to death in a winter storm. I crawled to the estate of a noble who had more rooms than he could count, and I begged his servants to let me sleep in his stables. They set dogs on me instead." His voice remained even, but his knuckles were white around his glass. "I survived that night by accident and luck. I was turned shortly after by a vampire who found me dying and thought I had interesting eyes." "And now you never turn anyone away." "Now I never turn anyone away," he confirmed. "It is a simple rule, and it costs me nothing to maintain. So when you appeared at my gate asking for stables, I gave you a chamber instead. Because I can. Because no one should have to beg for basic dignity." Luna felt something crack open in her chest. "You didn't tell me this to guilt me. No, I told you this so you would understand. Accepting what I offer does not make you weak or indebted. It makes you human and in need, and that is enough." She looked down at her glass, fighting unexpected tears. "Thank you for explaining. You are welcome." He returned to his seat, the moment of vulnerability sealed away behind his usual composure. "Now, tell me what brought you to my mountain with empty pockets and no destination." So she did. The story spilled out over dinner, punctuated by courses she barely tasted. Her father's death, the debts that swallowed his estate, the aunt who took her in but treated her like a servant, the final fight that sent Luna walking north with nothing but the clothes she wore, following half-remembered stories of work in the mountain towns. Warlord Xenophon listened without interruption, his attention absolute. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Your aunt is a fool," he finally said. "Competent stable hands are worth their weight in silver." Luna laughed despite herself. "That's your takeaway?" "Among others, but yes, primarily that." He stood again, moving to a window that looked out over the darkened valley. "You are welcome to stay as long as you wish. The golden chamber is yours. If you insist on working, I will not stop you, but neither will I pay you. Consider it practice if you like. When you are ready to move on, I will provide references that will open any stable door in the country." "Why would you do that?" He glanced back at her, his pale profile sharp against the night. "Because I can. Because kindness is not finite. Because 2,000 years has taught me that generosity returns more than greed ever could. You're not what I expected a vampire king to be. No one is ever what you expect them to be, Luna. That is the only universal truth I have learned." She stayed. Days became weeks, and Luna settled into a routine that felt impossible and perfect in equal measure. She woke in her golden chamber, ate breakfasts that seemed designed specifically for her tastes, and spent her mornings in the stables. The grooms accepted her presence eventually, even began asking her opinion on difficult horses. In the afternoons, she explored the vast library or walked the grounds. Edgar was a constant, polite presence, answering questions and ensuring she never lacked for anything. And in the evenings she dined with Warlord Xenophon. Those dinners became the axis her days turned on. He was a fascinating conversationalist when he chose to be, full of stories from centuries she had only read about in history books. He made the fall of empires sound personal, because for him they were. He spoke 5 languages fluently and could read a dozen more. But it was the quiet moments Luna treasured most. The way he listened, truly listened, when she talked about her father's horses or her childhood dreams. The rare, fleeting smiles when she said something that surprised him. The gradually thawing coldness in his eyes. She was falling for him, slowly, terrifyingly, inevitably, falling for a vampire king who had shown her kindness when the world had shown her none. "You are troubled tonight," he observed one evening, a month into her stay. "The wine is not to your liking?" "The wine is perfect. Everything here is perfect. That's the problem." "I fail to see how perfection is problematic." Luna set down her glass. "Because I'm getting used to it. Because every day I stay here, leaving gets harder. And I can't stay forever, can I? I'm not part of your world." Warlord Xenophon's expression shuddered. "You may stay as long as you wish. I've made that clear." "But not forever." "Not really." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "I'm human. I age. Eventually, I'll be an old woman in your golden chamber, and you'll still look exactly like this, and it will be obvious to everyone that I'm just some mortal you took pity on once." "You underestimate your value." "Do I? What am I to you, really? A guest? A charity case? Something else?" The silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. "You are someone I have come to value," he finally said, each word carefully measured. "Your presence here is not burden or pity. It is welcome." "Welcome," Luna repeated. "That's a very neutral word. Would you prefer I use a different one?" "I'd prefer you be honest." His jaw tightened. "I am being honest. I'm also being appropriate. You are human. I'm not. The distance between those states is considerable. Because I'm mortal. Because you deserve a life I cannot give you. Children, aging alongside a partner, death that comes naturally and peacefully. My world does not offer those things." Luna's heart hammered. "What if I don't want those things? What if I want something different?" "You are young. You do not know what you want yet." "I'm 24 years old, and I know exactly what I want. I want to stay here, with you. I want these dinners and these conversations, and the way you look at me when you think I'm not watching." She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "But if you're going to tell me that's impossible because I'm human, and you're afraid of caring about something mortal, then just say it. Don't hide behind what you think I deserve." Warlord Xenophon rose to face her, and for the first time since she had met him, he looked genuinely shaken. "You do not understand what you are asking for. Then explain it to me." "My world is filled with creatures who would see you as prey, politics that would devour you, and a social structure that values age and power above all else. You would be an outsider forever." "I'm already an outsider everywhere else. At least here I'd be an outsider who's welcome." He moved closer, and Luna held her ground. This close she could see the faint gold flecks in his dark eyes, could feel the unnatural cold that radiated from his skin. "If you stayed," he said quietly, "truly stayed, it would change things between us. I know. I would become possessive, protective. Vampires do not love casually, Luna. We obsess, we claim. I would want you in ways that might frighten you." "You don't frighten me." "I should." But his hand rose, hesitant, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His fingers were ice against her skin. "You truly wish to stay?" "Yes." "Even knowing what I am? What I would expect?" "Tell me what you would expect." His thumb traced her jawline, and she shivered. "Fidelity, exclusivity, your presence at my side as often as possible. Your blood, freely given, if you were willing." His voice dropped lower. "Your eventual turning, because I am not strong enough to watch you age and die." Luna's breath caught. "You want to turn me." "Want is insufficient. If you stayed, if we pursued this, I would eventually need to turn you. The alternative would destroy me." His hand fell away. "That is what you would be choosing. Immortality, isolation from human life, and eternity with someone who will never be easy to live with. You're asking me to become a vampire. I am asking you to understand the full scope of what staying means. If that is too much, I will understand. I will provide for your departure, help you establish yourself wherever you wish to go, and remember you fondly. But I will not let you choose blindly. Luna's mind raced. Vampirism, immortality, forever in this estate, with this man who looked at her like she was something precious and terrifying. I need time, she said, to think about this. Of course. He stepped back, his walls rebuilding. Take all the time you require. She fled to her golden chamber and spent the night staring at the ceiling, her mind a storm of possibilities. By morning, she had made her decision. She found him in his study, bent over a manuscript so old the pages looked like they would crumble at a breath. He glanced up as she entered, his expression carefully neutral. I want to stay, Luna said without preamble. I want all of it, the turning, the forever, the eternity with you. But not yet. He closed the manuscript with infinite care. Explain. I want time to be sure, to understand your world properly, to know that I'm choosing this because it's right, not because I'm grateful or desperate. She moved to stand across the desk from him. I want to stay as your guest and see what develops between us naturally. And when I'm ready, if I'm still certain, then we'll talk about the rest. That is reasonable. But I want honesty between us. No more pretending this is just hospitality. I want to know you, Warlord Xenophon, really know you. Wrath, he said quietly. What? My name. My real name, the one I was born with as a human. Wrath. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. My mother had a dark sense of humor. Wrath Xenophon. Luna tested the name. It suits you. Does it? Yes, there's something fierce under all that control. I've seen glimpses of it, she smiled. I want to see more. Careful what you wish for. I'm done being careful. Careful got me nowhere. Reckless got me here. He stood, moved around the desk, and before she could react, pulled her into a kiss that tasted of winter and wine and want. His lips were cold, his hands colder, but Luna melted into him anyway, her fingers tangling in his silver hair. When he pulled back, his eyes had darkened to pure black. Mine, he whispered. Say it. Yours, Luna breathed, and felt the word settle into her bones like an oath. The weeks that followed were a different kind of heaven. Wrath remained proper in public, distant around his staff, but in private, he was a revelation. Intense, focused, possessive, in ways that would have alarmed Luna if she had not wanted to be possessed. He taught her about vampire society, the labyrinthine politics and ancient grudges that defined his kind. He introduced her to the other vampires in his household, made it clear through word and body language that she was under his protection. Most accepted this with grace, a few did not. The girl from the stables, one female vampire said at a dinner gathering, her tone making the words an insult. Her name was Seraphine, and she had lived in Wrath's household for 3 centuries. How charming that you have taken in strays, my lord. Luna is my guest, Wrath said coolly. You will address her with respect. Of course. Forgive me. I simply wonder what service she provides that warrants such elevated accommodations. Luna felt her cheeks burn, but before she could respond, Wrath was standing. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. You will leave my house tonight, he said, his voice soft and absolutely lethal. You will not return without my explicit permission, which I do not foresee granting in your lifetime. Seraphine paled, her translucent skin going nearly transparent. My lord, I meant no. You meant exactly what you said, and I have given you my answer. He turned his back on her, a devastating dismissal. Edgar will escort you out. The dinner concluded in tense silence. When the guests had departed, Luna found Wrath on the terrace, staring out at the mountain darkness. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. Yes, I did. No one insults you under my roof. She's been with you for 300 years, and in that time, she has never learned when to hold her tongue. I tolerated it when it was directed at others. I will not tolerate it when directed at you. He turned to face her, his expression fierce. You are mine to protect. That means something. Luna moved into his arms, and he held her tight enough to hurt. She did not mind. But Seraphine's words had planted a seed of doubt. The other vampires saw her as an outsider, a temporary novelty. How many of them were simply better at hiding their disdain? She voiced this concern to Edgar one afternoon while helping in the stables. The old servant was quiet for a moment, carefully combing a horse's mane. There will always be those who resist change. The master has lived a certain way for a very long time. Your presence disrupts that. I never meant to cause problems. You have caused no problems. You have caused change, which some perceive as the same thing, but the master is happy in a way I have not seen in centuries. That should tell you something. He's happy? You make him laugh. You make him think about the future. For a being who has lived as long as he has, that is no small gift. Edgar patted the horse's neck. Do not let the seraphins of the world convince you that you do not belong. You belong because he has chosen you, and his choice is law here. Luna took the words to heart. She threw herself into learning everything she could about Wrath's world. She studied vampire history, learned the names and faces of the major families, memorized the complex web of alliances and enmities that governed their society. And slowly, the household adjusted to her presence. The vampires who remained treated her with courtesy. The human staff welcomed her warmly. She began to feel less like a guest and more like part of the strange, nocturnal family that occupied the estate. 3 months after her arrival, Wrath came to her chamber late one night. She was reading by the fire and looked up in surprise when he entered without knocking. "We need to leave the estate," he said without preamble. "Pack light. We depart in an hour." Luna set down her book. "What's wrong?" "Politics. A delegation from the Council of Elders is arriving tomorrow to discuss territorial disputes. They will ask questions about you that I do not care to answer." "What kind of questions?" "Whether I intend to turn you, whether you are a temporary fascination or a permanent fixture, whether your presence represents a dangerous attachment to humanity that compromises my judgment." His jaw tightened. "I will not subject you to their interrogation." "Where are we going?" "I have a smaller estate 3 days' ride from here, more remote, less formal. We will stay there until the council finishes its business." Luna rose, already mentally cataloging what she needed. "Give me 30 minutes." They left under cover of darkness, just the two of them on horseback, racing down mountain paths that Luna could barely see. Wrath guided them with the surety of someone who could see in pitch blackness, his horse never faltering. The smaller estate was built into a cliff face, accessible only by a narrow trail that made Luna's stomach churn. But the interior was warm and surprisingly cozy, clearly designed for comfort rather than grandeur. "No servants," Wrath said as he built up the fire in the main room. "No other vampires, just us." "How long can we stay?" "As long as necessary. Edgar will send word when it is safe to return." That first night, they sat by the fire and talked until dawn threatened. Wrath told her stories he had never shared before, about his human life, his turning, the early years when he was still learning what it meant to be a monster. "I was not a good vampire for the first century," he admitted. "I killed without thought, fed without care. I was angry at what I had become, and I took that anger out on anyone unfortunate enough to cross my path." "What changed?" "I met someone who showed me that immortality did not have to be monstrous. An older vampire, a scholar. She taught me that we could be more than our hunger." He stared into the flames. "She died protecting me during a power struggle I was too young and stupid to avoid. I have tried to live in a way that would honor her memory since then. By taking in people who beg at your gates. Among other things, she believed kindness was not weakness. I have tried to prove her right." Luna leaned her head against his shoulder. "I wish I could have met her." "She would have liked you." His arm came around her waist. "You have the same stubbornness." They stayed at the Cliff Estate for 2 weeks, and those weeks were some of the happiest of Luna's life. Without the formality of the main household, without the watching eyes of staff and other vampires, they could simply be themselves. Wrath taught her to ride the way vampires rode, recklessly fast and half wild. He showed her how to move silently through the forest, tracking animals by scent and sound. He kissed her against ancient trees and in cold mountain streams, his control slipping just enough to let her see the want underneath. "I'm trying to be patient," he told her one night, his hands tangled in her hair, his forehead pressed to hers. "I'm trying to let you have time to be certain, but you make it very difficult." "Good," Luna whispered, and kissed him until his careful control shattered. He pulled back before things went too far, his breathing unsteady. Not yet, not until you are ready to commit to everything. What if I'm ready now? You are not. You're still thinking of this as a romance, a beautiful story. But the reality of vampirism is harsh. The hunger, the isolation, the watching everyone you knew age and die. I need you to understand that fully before we take that step. Luna knew he was right, but it did not make the waiting easier. Edgar's message arrived on the 14th day. The council had departed. It was safe to return. The ride back was quieter, both of them reluctant to return to reality. But when they crested the final ridge and saw the main estate spread below them, Luna felt a surprising surge of homecoming. This was home now. Strange as it was, this mountain fortress full of vampires and secrets had become the place she belonged. They returned to find the household in an uproar. 2 members of the council had remained behind, insisting on speaking with Wrath directly. Edgar met them at the door, his usually calm demeanor visibly strained. "My lord, I apologize. I sent them away twice, but they refused to leave." "It is fine, Edgar. I will handle it." Wrath's hand found Luna's. "Stay close." The 2 council members were waiting in the formal receiving room, their white hair and translucent skin marking them as ancient vampires. Both stood as Wrath entered, their expressions cold. "Warlord Xenophon," the taller one said, "we have matters to discuss." "Then discuss them and leave. You have overstayed your welcome." "This concerns the human." The shorter counselor's gaze flicked to Luna with barely concealed disdain. "There are concerns about your attachment to her. My attachments are not the council's concern. They are when they affect your judgment. You have been offered a seat on the High Council 3 times. You have refused 3 times. We believe this mortal is the reason. My reasons for refusing are my own. You are one of our oldest, most powerful leaders. Your presence on the High Council would strengthen our entire society, but you cannot serve if you are distracted by human concerns." Wrath's hand tightened on Luna's. When he spoke, his voice was ice. "Let me be abundantly clear. I will never sit on your council. I have no interest in your politics, your power struggles, or your endless debates about territory and tradition. I refused your offers long before Luna arrived, and I will continue refusing them long after she has chosen her fate." "Then why the attachment? What purpose does she serve?" "She serves no purpose. She simply is. And that is sufficient for me." The counselors exchanged glances. The taller one stepped forward. "There are those who believe you are no longer fit to hold your territory, that this human has made you weak. Then let them come and attempt to take it from me. I will enjoy the exercise. This is not a jest. If you will not join the council, if you insist on this attachment to mortality, there will be consequences." "What consequences?" Luna asked, speaking for the first time. Both vampires looked at her as if surprised she could talk. "Specifically, what are you threatening?" The shorter counselor's lip curled. "The council can strip territorial rights, revoke bloodlines, make existence very difficult for vampires who do not comply with our wishes. But you will not do any of that," Luna said calmly, "because Wrath is older and stronger than either of you, and you need him far more than he needs you. This is not a threat. This is a tantrum." The silence that followed was deadly. Wrath made a sound that might have been a laugh. "She has a point." "This mortal is teaching you disrespect," the taller counselor hissed. "This mortal is teaching me honesty. Now leave my home before I remove you myself." They left, but the threat in their eyes promised this was not over. When they were gone, Wrath pulled Luna into his arms and held her tight. "That was unwise. Probably. But I was not going to stand there and let them threaten you. They cannot actually threaten me. I'm too old, too powerful. But they can make life difficult for those around me. Let them try." He kissed her temple. "You are fearless and foolish in equal measure. I learned from the best." That night, Luna could not sleep. She paced her golden chamber, replaying the confrontation in her mind. The counselors had looked at her like she was a pet, a distraction, something less than real. She found herself standing before the mirror, studying her reflection, human, mortal, temporary. That was all they saw. But she could be more. Wrath had offered her that chance. Was she ready? She thought of her father, of the mortal life she had already lost. She thought of her aunt, of the human world that had chewed her up and spit her out. What did she really have to go back to? And then she thought of Wrath, of his rare smiles, his terrible jokes, his fierce protectiveness, of the way he looked at her like she was his whole world. The answer was obvious. It had been obvious for weeks. She found him in his study, awake despite the late hour. He glanced up as she entered, then set aside his book when he saw her expression. "I am ready," Luna said. "I want you to turn me." He was on his feet instantly. "Luna, think carefully." I have done nothing but think, and I'm certain." She crossed to him, taking his cold hands in hers. "I do not want to go back to the human world. I do not want to age and die while you stay the same. I want forever with you, in whatever form that takes. Turn me. The process is painful, dangerous. There is a chance you will not survive. I trust you to see me through it. Once done, it cannot be undone. You will be a vampire forever." "Good." Wrath searched her face, looking for doubt. Finding none, he pulled her close. "Are you absolutely certain?" "Yes." "Then we do this properly. Not tonight, in haste and emotion. Tomorrow at sunset. I will prepare everything, ensure you are as safe as possible." He cupped her face in his hands. "And when it is done, when you wake as one of us, you will be my equal in every way. Not a guest, not a human I took pity on, my partner." "Your partner," Luna echoed. "I like the sound of that." He kissed her then, deep and claiming, and she felt the promise of forever in it. The next day passed in a blur of preparation. Edgar explained the process with clinical precision. Wrath would drain her to the point of death, then give her his blood to drink. The transformation would take 3 days. She would feel like she was dying, because she would be. "Many do not survive," Edgar said quietly. "The Master wants you to know that." "I will survive," Luna said with more confidence than she felt. "I have to." At sunset, Wrath came to her chamber dressed in simple black. His expression was grave. "Last chance to change your mind." "Not changing it." He led her to his own chambers, deeper in the estate than she had ever been. The room was spare and cold, dominated by a massive bed draped in heavy curtains. "Lie down," he instructed. "Try to relax." Luna lay back on the bed, her heart hammering. Wrath joined her, his body a line of cold beside her warmth. "I will make this as painless as possible," he said, "but there will be pain. When it becomes too much, let yourself slip away. I will keep you tethered. I trust you." He kissed her once more, then his mouth moved to her throat. The first bite was sharp, shocking. Then came a cold that spread from the wound, numbing and strange. Luna felt her blood leaving her body, felt her heartbeat slowing. The world began to dim. Wrath's voice reached her through the fog. "Stay with me, Luna, not yet. A little longer." She tried to obey, clinging to consciousness, but the darkness was so seductive, so easy. Then something sweet and cold touched her lips. "Drink," Wrath commanded. "Drink now." Luna drank. His blood was nothing like she expected, thick and powerful, filling her with fire and ice simultaneously. She drank until he pulled away, and then the darkness claimed her completely. The 3 days that followed were agony. Luna burned and froze, died and lived, screamed without sound in a darkness that seemed endless. She felt her body breaking down and rebuilding, her heart stopping and restarting, everything she was dissolving and reforming. Through it all, Wrath was there. She felt his presence, his hands, his voice, pulling her back when she drifted too far toward death. He did not let her go. On the morning of the 4th day, Luna opened her eyes. The world was different. Sharper, clearer, full of colors she had no names for. She could hear everything, the whisper of air through stone, the heartbeat of a mouse in the walls, conversations happening 3 floors away. And she was so terribly hungry. Wrath was beside her instantly. "Easy. Do not move too quickly. You need to feed." He helped her sit, held her steady when her new strength made her clumsy. Then he offered his wrist, already bleeding. Luna drank, and it was nothing like that first taste. This was life, power, everything she needed. She drank until the edge of hunger dulled, then pulled back with an effort. "Good," Wrath said softly. "You have remarkable control for a newborn." Luna looked at her hands. They were paler than before, but not the translucent white of ancient vampires. Her reflection in the mirror across the room showed hair that had lightened to silver-streaked black, eyes that were darker and stranger. "I am a vampire," she whispered. "You are." Wrath smiled, and it was full of pride and relief. "You survived." Luna launched herself at him, and he caught her easily. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other while the reality of what she had chosen settled in. Over the following weeks, Luna learned what it meant to be a vampire. The hunger, which was constant but manageable, the heightened senses which were overwhelming until she learned to filter them, the strength which she accidentally demonstrated by shattering 3 door frames and a stair railing in the first week. Wrath was patient, teaching her control with the same care he showed his horses. The household adjusted to her new status with surprising ease. Edgar congratulated her with what might have been genuine warmth. But outside the estate, word of her turning spread quickly. And not everyone was pleased. The Council of Elders sent a formal summons 1 month after Luna's transformation. They wanted to meet the newest vampire, to ensure she had been turned properly and legally. "It is a formality," Wrath assured her as they prepared for the journey. "They have no power to undo what has been done." But Luna saw the tension in his shoulders, and she knew it was more than that. The council convened in an underground hall beneath the city, a vast space lit by thousands of candles. Dozens of vampires filled the seats, all ancient, all powerful. Luna felt their eyes on her like a physical weight. The High Counselor, a vampire so old his skin was nearly transparent, studied her with interest. Luna Cartwright, once human, now turned by Warlord Xenophon, an unusual progression. "She was turned legally and with full consent," Wrath said. "Your laws have been satisfied." "Indeed, though the circumstances remain curious. A stable girl, elevated to immortality. Some might call it romantic, others might call it reckless." Luna felt anger spark. "I'm standing right here. You could direct your questions to me." Several vampires hissed at her audacity. The High Counselor merely raised an eyebrow. "Very well. Why did you choose to become one of us?" "Because I love Wrath. Because I wanted forever with him. Because the human world had nothing left to offer me." "And you understand what you have given up? Sunlight, mortality, any chance at a human family?" "I understand perfectly. I chose this with full knowledge of what it meant." "Did you know," another counselor interjected, "that Warlord Xenophon was once human? That he was poor, desperate, and turned against his will?" Luna glanced at Wrath, saw his jaw tighten. "I knew he was once human. He told me the story himself." "Then you know he has always had a weakness for mortal suffering. Some believe he turned you out of pity, not love. A final rescue of the stable girl who begged at his gate." "That's enough," Wrath said, his voice cold enough to frost the air. But Luna laid a hand on his arm. "Let me answer." She faced the council, her new vampire composure settling over her like armor. "Wrath saved me, yes. He gave me shelter when I had none. But he did not turn me to save me. He turned me because I asked him to, because we both wanted a future together, and because he knew I could handle what that meant. If you think I am some weak mortal he pitied into immortality, you are welcome to test that theory." The silence was profound. Then the High Counselor laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "She has fire. I approve. Welcome to our society, Luna Cartwright. Try not to cause too much trouble." The formal interrogation concluded, but several counselors approached afterward with thinly veiled hostility. Luna fielded their questions with growing confidence, Wrath a steady presence at her side. As they left the hall, he pulled her close. "You were magnificent. I was terrified." "That makes it more impressive." He kissed her temple. "They will gossip, speculate, and judge. Let them. You are mine and I am yours, and their opinions mean nothing." But the gossip did spread. Luna learned quickly that vampire society was as vicious as any human court, perhaps more so. Whispers followed her whenever they appeared in public. Stable girl, charity case, the warlord's pet project. She endured it because Wrath made it worth enduring. Every slight, every insult, he met with fierce protectiveness. When one vampire called her a gold digger at a formal gathering, Wrath challenged him to a duel, and won so decisively the vampire fled the territory entirely. "You cannot fight everyone who insults me," Luna said that night. I can certainly try. Wrath, I am serious. I need to prove myself on my own terms, not just as your partner. He was quiet for a moment. What do you propose? Luna had been thinking about this for weeks. I want to start something, a project, something that serves the community and proves I am more than just the poor girl you took pity on. What kind of project? She told him her idea and watched his expression shift from surprise to approval. It is ambitious, he said when she finished. It will require significant resources. I know. That is why I need your help to start it, but once it is running, it will be mine to manage. Wrath nodded slowly. Then we will make it happen. 3 months later, Luna stood in front of the newly converted stables and felt pride swell in her chest. The building had been transformed into a refuge, a place where humans in need could find shelter, food, and help without question or payment required. It was the answer to every night she had spent cold and hungry, to every door slammed in her face. No one would beg at Wrath's gate and be turned away. They would be welcomed, fed, given a warm place to sleep, and resources to rebuild their lives. She called it the Golden Stable, a name that acknowledged both her past and her present. The first guest arrived that evening, a young man with desperate eyes and nowhere else to go. Luna welcomed him herself, showed him to a clean room with a real bed, and watched his face crumple with relief. This was why she'd been turned. This was the purpose she'd been searching for. Word of the Golden Stable spread quickly. Humans came in increasing numbers, and Luna hired staff to help manage the growing demand. Some guests stayed a night, some stayed months. All of them left better than they arrived. The vampire community's response was mixed. Some saw it as a strange human charity beneath notice. Others recognized it as something more proof that Luna Cartwright was not just the warlord's companion, but a force in her own right. The turning point came 6 months after the refuge opened. A high-ranking vampire arrived at the estate requesting an audience. His name was Lord Darien, and he was known for his wealth and influence. I have heard of your project, he told Luna, his tone carefully neutral. The Golden Stable. An interesting endeavor. It serves a need, Luna replied. Indeed, I have a proposal. I would like to fund the creation of similar refugees in other territories, with your guidance and management. Luna stared at him. Why? Because it's a good idea, because there are too many humans suffering needlessly, and because it would benefit vampire society to be seen as less monstrous by the mortals we live alongside. He smiled slightly. Also, my mate was once human. Your story resonates with her. She insisted I make this offer. Luna looked at Wrath, who gave her an encouraging nod. I would need full control of operations, no interference, no demands beyond regular reporting. Agreed. And I want other vampires with human mates involved. Make this something we build together. Lord Darien's smile widened. I believe we can arrange that. The network of refuges grew steadily over the following year. 5 stables became 10, then 20. Each one bore the golden symbol. Each one offered the same promise: shelter without condition, help without price. Luna found herself at the center of a quiet revolution. Vampires who had once looked down on her now sought her advice. Humans who had feared vampires began to see them as potential allies. And through it all, Wrath stood beside her. Proud, protective, and deeply, utterly in love. One evening, 2 years after her turning, they stood on the terrace of the estate and looked out at the valley below. Lights from the golden stables glowed like stars in the darkness. Do you ever regret it? Wrath asked quietly. Giving up sunlight, mortality, the human life you could have had? Luna considered the question seriously. No, I miss the sun sometimes. I miss the simplicity of being human. But I would make the same choice again without hesitation. She leaned into him. This life, with you, building something that matters, it is more than I ever dreamed of having. You have given me more than you know, Wrath said. Purpose beyond survival, reason beyond routine. You have reminded me why I chose to be more than my hunger. We saved each other. We did. They stood together as night deepened, 2 immortals who had found their forever in the unlikeliest of places. The Council of Elders never fully accepted Luna, but they learned to respect her. The Golden Stable Network continued to grow, helping thousands of humans across multiple territories. Luna's reputation shifted from the stable girl to the refuge builder, a title she wore with pride. And in the quiet moments between the work and the politics, she and Wrath built a life that was tender and fierce in equal measure. They rode horses through mountain nights, danced in empty ballrooms, made love in their chambers, and argued about books in the library. It was not the fairy tale ending Luna would have imagined as a desperate girl begging at a gate. It was better, real, hard-won, and entirely theirs. 5 years after her turning, on the anniversary of the night she first arrived at the estate, Wrath brought her back to the gates where it had all begun. The storm had returned, rain hammering the mountain with the same fury as that long-ago night. "Do you remember what you asked for?" he said over the wind. "A place in the stables," Luna replied. "Somewhere to sleep." "And what did I give you?" "A chamber made of gold." "No." He pulled her close, his forehead against hers. "I gave you a future, and you gave me one in return." Luna kissed him in the rain, tasting storm and eternity. "Best trade I ever made." "Agreed." They walked back into the estate together, immortal and infinite, ready for whatever centuries lay ahead. The golden chamber still stood, now kept as a symbol, and a promise shelter for any who needed it, grandeur for those who expected only stables. Luna had begged for basics and received everything. She had chosen immortality and found purpose. She had loved a vampire king and been loved fiercely in return. And every night, when she walked through the golden stables and saw the humans sleeping safely in warm beds, she remembered what it felt like to have nothing. She remembered cold gates and colder refusals. She made sure no one would ever feel that way again. That was the legacy she built. That was the forever she and Wrath created together. Not perfect, but real. Not easy, but worth it. Exactly as it should be.